Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. Today we're talking about self-love, and we're going to teach you everything you need to know about learning yourself in 45 minutes or less. No, I'm kidding. Self-love is a lifelong journey. Wouldn't you agree?
I do. And I think there's ebbs and flows to it.
Yeah, I do too. And I think especially if you were raised in a family that didn't prize unconditional love or unconditional self-love, it's even harder. There was a thing I saw years ago where a teacher had all of the students in a classroom roll up a sheet of paper, and he put a trash bin at the front center of the classroom, and he said, I want everyone to throw this ball of paper into the trash can. And everyone did, and of course the front row, most of them made it, and one person in the back row made it. And he said, you all had an equal opportunity to throw your ball of paper into the trash can, but only a handful of you made it. And I remember thinking about that, really stayed with me for several reasons. But in talking about self-love, I think some of us start off with a better opportunity for achieving self-love, right? We're in the front row in terms of the family we were born into. And others of us are in the back row, raising our hand going, can you bring the bin a little closer?
And that can be dependent on generational patterns of the way that maybe our family of origin was raised, or cultural differences, or expectations based on that's not the way we act in this family. I mean, there's so many variables involved with this. But what it really comes down to is, can you look yourself in the mirror and be okay with the person looking back at you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the ultimate goal, I think, for why we're here on this earth, is to learn to love ourselves. And one thing that frustrates me about self-love is how loving and kind we are to everyone else. And then usually we're not as loving and kind to ourselves. I mean, just think about how you show love to other people in your life. Think about all the big and small things you do for family and friends to show up for them, to show them that you care for them, that you're thinking about them. And then really think about, how do I show up for myself? How do I show myself that I'm loving myself, that I'm showing up for this person? How do I take care of myself? And I think often those two answers would be very, very different.
And it can be a very steep learning curve. If you've been giving, we talked about this in the last episode, of one of the lies we may tell ourselves is being a people pleaser. I can't really show myself, or people won't love me, or I'll be ostracized or cut from the pack. All of those things. If that's been your experience, where I have to give and you haven't experienced receiving, it would be really hard to know what it feels like.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I think when we are cognizant of the way we are treating ourselves, when we force ourselves to be observant of the inner talk that's going on inside of our head, our heart, our soul, it can be incredibly revealing. I have two friends who are sisters, and they joke with each other all the time. They pick on each other all the time. And to be honest, they're kind of mean to each other. And I pointed that out to them once, and they said, we don't have to be nice to each other. We're family. Haven't you known family members like that?
Quite personally, yes.
And I think this is often how we are with ourselves, because we are our own family and we don't feel that we have to be nice to ourselves. And yet, if you're not going to be nice and loving to yourself, what message are you sending out to the universe?
Right. And I thought about this before we started recording, of there are pockets in the United States, where sarcasm rules supreme. It's a lifestyle. People are sarcastic. They have an edge. They have a tone. If that's what you grew up around, you're going to have a much, much different perspective than if you grew up where people are genuinely more open and kind and tempered with what they may say to you. And that impacts everything. I think that's important to consider with the
Oh, yeah.
self-love is that some people might say, why are you so sarcastic or so hard on yourself when it could be similar to a regional dialect?
True. And it's really how you interpret it as well. I mean, if that's a form of self-love for you, then I guess that could work. But I do think it's important to set a goal to be more gentle with ourselves and to just love ourselves with all of our alleged illusionary faults and flaws.
Right. And I think even looking at what that means for you. So for one person, self-love might be, I'm going to gift myself with 20 minutes in the morning where I don't talk to another human being, or I walk without any noise in my ears, or I do, you're a big fan of doing a weekly salt bath and just relaxing and giving yourself that time. We can't define what may work for me may not work for you, may not work for someone else. It's as unique as our thumbprint.
It really is. I think it's important to monitor what your inner talk is, to really be observant of that. Write down all the stuff right now that you don't love about yourself. I'm all talk and no action. My hips are too big. My eyes are too small. I hold on to grudges. I spend money frivolously. I don't follow through on my promises. I'm needy. I'm too aloof. I'm too generous, too gregarious. I'm too shy. I never ask for help, whatever it might be. And then look at that list and examine each of those statements and ask yourself, is this true? And maybe the answer is yes. And so then ask yourself, well, can I change this? Or can I accept this about myself? Because remember, you can't change what you can't accept. So we've got to look at our own quote unquote faults before we can have a hope of changing them. And then we have to look honestly at these perceived faults and recognize that our limitations are there. But if we are to change and grow, we can transcend those perceived limitations. But before we even try and change ourselves, I think it is so important to first focus on accepting yourself just as you are right now. Like, I think, Denise, you and I have a fault, quote unquote, which is our complete and total inability to ask for help. I think you're just like me in that. Am I right?
Oh, I can't relate to that at all. And
Well,
yeah, that hyper independence, stubbornness, I'll take care of it is for me a very learned behavior. And it's also the way I came onto the planet.
yeah,
It's a
me
double
too.
whammy.
A double whammy. And I think it's important to look at how is that, again, perceived illusionary fault? How is that serving us? Well, it makes us feel safe in the world. If we don't rely on anyone, then no one's going to let us down. And
True.
so, again, you've got to be really honest about how is this limiting belief actually serving me? And if you're holding on to a limiting belief, you're not holding on to it because it's limiting you. You're holding on to it because it's protecting you. It's keeping you safe, no matter how illusionary that safety is. And so when you recognize this and accept this about yourself and do so lovingly, like, okay, yeah, me learning to do everything on my own, first of all, it served me in a lot of ways. It did give me a sense of control. It gave me a sense of personal empowerment. It made me independent. It made me strong. There's a lot of good that came out of that. But then you have to look at, well, how is that behavior limiting me? Well, it leaves other people kind of out in the cold. I mean, wasn't it Ben Franklin who said the number one way to make friends is to ask for a favor? And then I think
Yeah.
that was repeated. I think there's a whole chapter on that in Dale Carnegie's book. But I remember reading that going, uh-oh, I'm out. Because I have the hardest time asking for favors. And so I had to really kind of cultivate that skill. And like I've said before, fake it till I make it, and really kind of force myself to ask for help and ask for favors, because it is really, really important to be able to feel vulnerable in relationships. But first, we have to feel that sense of vulnerability within ourselves. That's where I think love is born.
And it can start really, really small. This is again back in the category of it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I've shared many, many times that the first thing that comes out of my mouth in the morning is thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for these opportunities. And some people do that with prayer. Some people do that with gentle stretching. Some people do that with journaling. But how you start your day and how you look at it, just you're setting the intention of today I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to be open to what the universe is going to provide in my life. And you're the blunt version. Your life might be a shit show right now, and you're thinking, I have nothing to be thankful for. Find something. Please trust me on this one. It makes the world a difference.
It really does. And when you're focusing on self-love, try to make that gratitude moment about yourself. You know, I'm grateful that I didn't lose my shit when the boss extended the meeting for an hour yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever it might be. But, you know, again, being a champion for yourself. So I think it's important to write that list down, write down a list of all the negative things you tend to tell yourself on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and really spend some honest time evaluating that list and thinking, you know, is this true? How has this served me? Can I change this, or can I accept this? Because there's some things about ourselves that maybe we can't change right now, or we just need to accept it's an intrinsic part of how we came onto this planet. But then I think you should write another list. And this one might be harder for some people to write, but this one you write down everything you love about yourself. And it could be simple things. I love my hair. I love my eyes. I like that I show up for my friends. I always tell the truth. I work hard. I keep my promises. I'm good at learning new things. I'm devoted to my family, you know, whatever it might be. And then you can hang this list by your bed or on your bathroom mirror or tuck it in your journal and look at it often and try to add to it each week. I actually did this, or I've talked about it on the show. I try to set like internal goals for myself each year, usually around the new year or my birthday. And one year I decided to do some serious inner child work. And during that year, I did this list, the negative list and then the positive list. And it was really easy for me to write the negative list, and it was really uncomfortable to write the positive list. Now, Denise, if you said to me, hey, can you write down a list of what you think my faults are? And can you write down a list of what you love about me? The opposite would be true. I'd have a hard time writing down any perceived faults, but I'd have such an easy time writing all the things I love about you.
I think that that's pretty consistent for most of us that are caring, loving, empathic, sensitive people, that we can see that light in someone else that we might struggle to see in ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And doesn't, when you say it out loud, doesn't it kind of sound silly? Like, of course you should love yourself. Of course you should have an easy time writing that down. And yet it's not always true.
It's true, but there are little things that you can do similar to how you start the day. Are you showing up for yourself? And I think that you're always making a choice. We're making a choice. So when that thought comes in of a negative self-talk, it comes back to the worthy book that we talked about last week. Do you keep repeating that to yourself, or do you replace it with something that is going to empower you moving forward from here? The past loop tape stuff is detrimental not only for our ability to show up in the world, but it's crucial in how we feel about ourselves, which I think the self-love part is such a huge component.
It really is. And a lot of that is about really going through your day, like you were saying, you know, waking up in the morning with gratitude and throughout the day being aware of your thoughts and feelings about yourself. And at the end of the day, closing out the day with a ritual or a routine so that you are just taking care of your body, your mind, and your soul throughout the day. And then taking a self-love inventory, because you've got to find that place of unconditional love within yourself And when you do a self-love inventory, it helps you remove any blocks that are preventing you from embracing your truest self.
Well, I want to add one more thing to that really quickly is that, don't be afraid to ask spirit for help. So I had a dark day of the soul recently, and I was out walking the dogs, all, by myself out in the woods and stuff. And I just stopped and I looked up and I said, I could use some help here. And then it just kind of broke the mood with myself. But I reached out and it was funny. I needed to know that there was a little bit of a nudge, that spirit was there, that spirit could hear me. So I went into the store to pick something up and something caught the corner of my eye. And I've been thinking about this book set that I wanted to read. It's an old book set. I haven't read it. It's not a trilogy. It's more than that, very fantasy based, something fun to read. And I looked, and way down on the bottom of the shelf in the corner of my eye, I saw this book set of these books that I've been trying to decide if I wanted to read them. And it was marked down to ridiculously low price. Do I feel like spirit heard me and said, look, we've got your back. We're taking care of you. Take some time off, read these fun escapist books. And so I see that connection. And I said, thank you. So I think sometimes it can show up in the damnedest ways.
I love that story. But you had to ask, you had to hit that
Yes.
point and go, hey, I could use some help here.
Yes. So no matter how much I told myself, you need time to decompress, step away, get a clear head, all the things, the self-love things. When I asked for help, spirit was like, okay, look, just take a little peek over here. This is your answer. And it was exactly the answer to calm the F down and hit the reset button.
And sometimes learning to love yourself and showing up for yourself is as simple and beautiful as pressing a pause button and reading a fun book.
Yeah.
I think we forget that. I think we always have to be working on ourselves and reading self-help books and taking classes and doing when really it's not as complicated as that really could be.
No, because I think for many of us, self-love has to start with self-care. We have to take a step back, and especially if you've been the primary person or a caretaker or a single parent, or you're managing a group of people in a work situation where you're everybody's everything, just taking a little step towards what can I do to take care of myself is going to lead to the self-love that can feel pretty elusive sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I think another way to really focus on your what your level of self-love is to really do a deep dive into patterns in your past relationships. I mean,
Oh,
that could be a hard one sometimes to do, because again, you got to be super, super honest, but it's also incredibly illuminating and enlightening. So just take a moment to think about the relationships in your life and think about what was the relationship, how did it end, if it ended, and what lessons you learned from that relationship, and what lessons did you teach?
and are you bringing in the same damn person with a different face?
Right. And why could that be? What is the lesson that you're not learning if that keeps coming up cyclically?
Which, when you mentioned earlier, doing that self-love inventory, it comes, it's always about finding where that seed got planted. And you have to go back and figure out what is there to love about me so that I can open up to someone else loving me. And we talked about the people getting hung up on their weight and how they present in the world, and it can be limiting or empowering. But really be honest with yourself. And I'm at a point in my life now where my self my physical self is so much about health, wellness, stamina, ability to still climb hills and drive long distances by myself. And I'm not quite so concerned about how my clothes may accentuate certain body parts. That was a very PC thing to say, wasn't it?
That was really good.
Thank you. I thought that was a good one. but we can get caught up in the old, oh, do I look fat? Are the wrinkles? Do you exercise? And if you feel better about yourself by having an external presentation that is younger and more vital, then God love you, go for it. But if you're okay with things getting a little more spongy or going a little more gray, that's okay too. It's important.
It's so important. And I think you have to look at how you are judging other people too. That my kids and I were at a social gathering, and this one woman was just like cutting down everyone in the room. And one of my kids said, I feel like I'm back in middle school hanging, standing next to this woman. And I said, if she's that judgmental about everyone else, can you imagine how ugly and awful it must be inside her head?
Oh,
Because like if you're constantly judging other people, why is she wearing that? Why isn't she dyeing her hair anymore? What is he thinking, wearing flip-flops to church? If you're in that mode, imagine how awful you must be to yourself.
and especially I love, love, love that your daughter picked up on that. That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But for
Uh,
those of us that are very empathic, I think it can lead to how do we release those old messages about how we're presenting, what we look like, what, the importance of how, again, how certain attributes are displayed in your 20s is much different than in your 40s or your 60s or your 80s.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's important too, is to recognize that the way you show up for yourself might change as you go through life. Um, I want to get back to the patterns in your relationships for a minute because I think sometimes the patterns, who is showing up in your life and the type of person that is showing up is very, very revealing in terms of how you are loving yourself. So, for example, years ago, I had a client who was definitely a type A personality, definitely a workaholic, needed to be in control. And she was in her late 30s and never had been married. And she was really upset and frustrated and worried because she kept attracting what she called Peter Pans, guys who just wanted to like date and float through life and not commit and just like have fun, and it really really frustrated her. And when I had her do this exercise of writing down the type of relationship she was attracting, what she was learning, what she was teaching, she recognized that because she was such a workaholic and a type A personality, she was attracting these non-committal Peter Pans into her life because that's what she needed to learn. She needed a little bit more of that Peter Pan mentality in her life. And so she had been judging herself for attracting these men into her life, and she switched it and was like, okay, wait, they're trying to teach me something. They're trying to teach me to slow down and ease up on the gas pedal a little bit and use my wings and fly and have some fun. And so when she started changing just a little bit and making more time, she actually started scheduling time in her life for just fun and frivolousness and sleeping in. And I think I asked her to like call out hooky to work one day a month, just little subtle shifts like that. Within 6 months, she met a very mature man who was committed and secure, but also could have fun. And within a year and a half, they were engaged and together. So I think it can be very, very life-changing when you really start to evaluate who you're attracting into your life and look honestly at why you're attracting them into your life. And rather than, blaming them or blaming yourself for attracting them, shift that focus to asking, what are they trying to teach me? What aspect of myself that I'm not seeing are they trying to shed light on? Knowingly or unknowingly. I don't think these Peter Pans came into her life and were like, I'm here to teach you to relax a little,
But it's true, we'll attract what we need in our lives. Years ago, when John Holland said to the group full of people, do you want to be in a relationship with someone like you? And all these people raised their hands. And he said, no, no, you need someone grounded and solid and who's going to keep you anchored so that you can go out into the ethers. And that always struck with me. We need that balance. I don't want to be with someone just like me. Oh my God, they drive me nutty. Going back to the self inventory again, those were really beautiful points. Thank you. uh, the body and appearance, how you see yourself, self acceptance, that's huge with the self love. Then the mind and intelligence, I think that that's a huge, huge part about the derogatory remarks. Some people will discount their intelligence or their interest, or they'll say, how can I be so stupid? Or why do I always say such dumb things? Maybe keep an eye on that. If you're if you're knocking yourself down for how intelligent you are, how capable you are.
Yeah, that's important. Look at how you're showing up for yourself in all areas of your life when you're doing a self-love inventory. Look at your home. Are you taking care of your home? Does it feel like a reminder every time that you walk through your home of things that you're not doing or cleaning or organizing or putting away? What is your home trying to tell you about how you love yourself? Look at your work. Do you feel energized or drained? Do you personalize your space with a special plant or fountain or crystal or photos? Do you surround yourself with supportive coworkers? Do you feel valued and appreciated?
Those are all so, so valid. And I think for those of us that spend a lot of time with spirit, whether through our profession, through our everyday life, through the way that we're wired, what are you doing to honor that? Because if you are doing any kind of modality that is working with spirit as a conduit, making the time to do your own work, to take care of yourself, to sing, to write, to play, to whatever helps you strengthen that cord for yourself is going to lead to greater self-love.
Yes. Yeah. Are there people in your life that are taking advantage of you? Do you surround yourself with people who love you and treat you well? Do you feel cherished? I think, again, our relationships that we have with other people are a reflection of how we love ourselves. And if you're feeling stuck in a place where the people at work don't support you or value your work, or the people in your personal life aren't cherishing you, I just think those aren't reasons to judge yourself or feel like a victim and all of that. It's an opportunity for you to say, okay, these people are showing up in my life to wave a flag and get me to notice some changes I need to make.
And how you present in the world. So this is kind of a weird example, but I was here in rural Maine a while ago and I looked, and a lot of the women that were in this store that I were in were wearing the rural Maine outfit, just jeans, sneakers, a t-shirt, just very, very, very casual, very grounded, very down to earth. If we brought someone in from a metropolitan area or from a different part of the country where it may be more style or more fashion or something, they would be really confused that women would be dressing this way. And I think how you present, how you're what you're comfortable in, if you wear something more tailored, if you wear something more flowy, if you have to work on that in a way of self-expression, because the more comfortable you can feel in the way that resonates with who you really are is going to help you feel better about yourself. And again, I think foster that self-love.
Well, that goes back to one of my favorite mantras that I say to myself all the time. When you invest in you, the universe invests in you. And I don't mean that financially at all. I mean that in terms of, are you investing time into yourself? Are you investing thought and care into yourself? And are you showing up for yourself? And are you showing yourself that you're investing in yourself by how you dress, how you take care of yourself, how you take care of your home, how you clean your car, how you treat coworkers, all of that. I think all of it is a compilation.
Humble opinion, I think it all leads to the relationship we have with ourselves is going to be mirrored in the relationships with other people, whether they're acquaintances, friends, coworkers, and the stronger you feel with yourself, being able to speak your truth or being able to wear what you're comfortable in or to drive a 20-year-old car or needing a brand new car, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But what it comes down to is, are you feeling like no matter how you show up, people are just accepting you for who you are? Because you have to find that level of self-acceptance in order to find the self-love.
Yeah, you really do. I had a friend, I think I've told this story before, but it's been a while. I had a friend I worked with, and she was very, very negative. A great person, really, a truly great person, great coworker, lots of wonderful accolades, but just always negative. If the sun was shining, it's so hot. You know what I mean? Like always, always saw everything as half empty. And we had a new hire come into the place where I was working. And I don't know, we had one of, when you have, what are those things called where like you go, they're like icebreakers before a big meeting, where you have to say things that are on your heart, or one of those like
Oh,
cold,
what?
what are they? I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, we had to do one of these exercises. And this negative coworker was saying that something that was weighing on her heart was that she hadn't been invited to an employee social function that was held outside of the office. And it really hurt. And the new hire, bold as brass, said, well, I think you would be invited to more of that stuff if you weren't so negative. No offense, but your energy brings this whole office down.
Oh,
Denise, we all like our jaws were like on the floor. We all just like looked at this. She'd only been there like 2 months, and we'd been working with this, lovely but negative woman for years. And we just, it was like a tennis match. Like we're looking from her to the other. And and the negative coworker took it really, really well. And holy cow, like she just transformed. She really, really did. I mean, I'm still friends with her today. She got into therapy, she got into exercise, she got into daily journaling, she got into meditation. It was just amazing to see. It transformed her whole life. And she got promoted 2 years later in a very big way. She got married 2 years later. Like, I mean, really, everything changed.
if that had happened to me, it would have come across as mean. That feels mean to me to do that in a public place.
It was mean. I mean,
Okay.
it was like we were just so like, what is happening? And yet, I think because she was a new hire and no one really knew her that well, maybe you know how sometimes you can walk into a situation that's been going on forever and you can see it so clearly because you're new to it.
Yeah. Did it
Maybe that's
change the
why.
did it change the relationship with the other people with the new hire?
Yeah. She
Okay.
actually didn't stay long, to be honest, if I think about it now. Yeah,
Surprise.
I know she did not stay long. But I feel like, how they say like some people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I think
Hmm.
this woman came into this other woman's life for a reason, because just holding up that mirror, she was like, oh, and like I said, we're still good friends today. And she said that she realized her negative outlook on life, melancholic, I think is the way she termed it, was really a way of hugging herself and protecting herself, but also a reflection of how she didn't love herself at all. And it was a big slap in the face. And like you said, not nicely delivered, but kudos to her for hearing the truth in those words and taking the action steps to say, okay, I think I do need to make some changes.
It's true. It had a good ending. It was a positive catalyst for that person.
Yeah, yeah.
You've shared this many, many times because it is a level of expertise that you have. And people will do crystal grids or use crystals to manifest a love situation or to bring romance into their life. What would be a way to do that for self-love?
Well, there's a lot of great stones that are wonderful for self-love. I think my favorite is pink opal because it's so gentle and it's called a mothering stone, a self-mothering stone. So when you work with pink opal, it really does help you learn to mother yourself, learn to love yourself the way a mother does. Rhodochrosite is another gentle stone that's wonderful for that, and rose quartz is also fantastic for any kind of love. So I'd recommend people start with that. Now, if you're ready to really clear out some heavy stuff, like my melancholic friend, you would want to go to malachite because that's a great stone for really holding up that mirror and taking an honest look at yourself. But that's only if you're definitely ready for that. Rhodonite is great if you have a lot of unforgiveness towards yourself that you need to let go of. But you can create a heart healing grid where you take a heart-shaped stone, preferably one that's green or pink, and then you want to put single pointed clear quartz stones and point them away from the heart stone for about a week if you want, or you can actually do this on your heart chakra, or you can create it as a grid. And you just imagine that crystal grid pulling out of your heart anything that is blocking yourself from self-love. And then you want to take those single pointed clear quartz stones and turn them so that they're pointing into the heart. And you want to spend some time pulling all the love from the universe into your heart.
Well, I love that. That's
Yeah,
nice.
that's a really nice one to do, I think. And something else I like to do is sometimes I'll just hold a heart-shaped stone and I'll ask that any love that I have blocked in my life is now returned to me. And I just call it back into my soul. Do you
Mm.
ever do stuff like that?
I do, and I've shared that there's a rock beach down by the river where I live. And remember the day I told you earlier that I said, oh, I need some help here, that I looked down, like I was walking the dogs, and then I looked probably 5 minutes after I said that, and there was a perfect heart-shaped rock. Did I take that as a sign that we've got you on this? Yes.
Yeah, that's
So
beautiful.
I
Did
think it
you
can, did I
did you
keep it?
keep it?
I
Yeah.
did. I did. Yeah. And I asked if I could keep it first. I know that sounds weird, but I always ask now before I pick up any of my treasures if they want to go or if they want to stay.
No, I think that's beautiful. I have a huge glass, I don't know, vase or whatever, filled with shells and heart-shaped stones I found. And the other day I was dusting it and I was looking at it and I thought, oh gosh, what if you all want to be back at the beach? Like, you're probably not
Uh-huh.
happy, you know? So I totally get that.
And sometimes they'll just stay with us for a while. Like I've had treasures that have moved around the country with me, and then I'll realize, okay, I think this is time to go back out into the earth again. And that's important to acknowledge as well, is that honoring those gifts that were given from spirit that are connected with nature.
Hmm. Something else you can do is write a love letter to yourself, where you write a letter to yourself telling yourself all the things you either needed to hear when you were growing up and or the things you need to hear right now. And again, it might feel uncomfortable to do that, but something powerful happens when we commit our thoughts to paper. And I know you know that because you journal every day. But don't you feel that when you put ink to paper, it's transformative.
What I love about all the things that we're suggesting, they're private, they're quiet, they're things that you can do to take care of yourself and bolster your self love without having to worry about anyone making a comment or pulling you backwards. Or the vision I get a lot during readings, if it's someone who's trying to step out of something, little tiny kids run on a playground and someone will try to grab the back of their shirt to hold them back. When spirit shows me that, it's someone who's ready to break free from those old constraints, but there may be people or situations in their life trying to hold them back. And when you are able to put it down on paper and see it and have that true conversation with yourself in your heart, no one is going to grab the back of your shirt and hold you back.
Oh, I love that metaphor. What do you think about taking, okay, I don't know why that book kind of drives me crazy, and yet I'm kind of fascinated by it. You know, the love language book?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I saw this thing where this woman was saying she was writing about how she took the love language quiz, and instead of showing it to her partner and saying like, "Hey, this is my love language," I think hers was words of affirmation was her love language. And instead of like telling her partner like, "Hey, this is what I need from you," she was like, "Oh, if that's my love language, that's how I have to love myself."
Oh,
And so she started like leaving little post-it notes around her house for herself, on her refrigerator, her bathroom mirror, in her closet, on her steering wheel in her car. And I thought that's really interesting.
that makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Because if your love language was act of service
That's
and you did
mine.
something
If you
and
want to
did
love me,
something
you gotta work. No, I'm kidding.
but if you applied that to yourself and did an act of service for yourself, that would be the extreme of self-love. Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
I thought that was a neat twist on that book that I know I feel like it's just been that book has been talked about too much, but I think that's a neat idea. So maybe you guys could take the quiz if you haven't already and then think about how can I apply my love language to myself?
And if you're not receiving that from people in your life and you are able to give it to yourself, are you opening up your heart a little bit, opening up that door to your heart a little bit wider, or maybe modeling, and you'll be able to use your words and say, it really makes a difference if you could just give me a little note now and again. But you have to get used to what it feels like to have that happen in your life.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think too that it's important to really recognize that we have to give ourselves a break in this thing called life. We have to cut ourselves some slack and be gentle with ourselves as we go through this process. And so learning to just laugh and just have fun with all of this is so important. One of the things that helped me a lot, I'm very hard on myself. I have been, always have been. I work really hard. I push myself. I always am creating new goals, but it just feels like I got into this cycle of my life where I felt like every year, yeah, I was creating new goals, but I was adding to the plate, you know? And I kept having that visual of like a waiter walking through a restaurant and people were like adding plates to his tray. And it was like, oh, how much can I do? And I read about I think it's an actress, her name is Ellen Bernstein, has this thing where every day, I'm sorry, every month, she schedules one shouldless day where there's nothing she should do. And I thought, ooh, I'm stealing that idea. And so I do that now once a month. It's not like I put it in my calendar. I shouldn't be like the third Saturday is my shouldless day. But I try to have, and to be honest, I try to have one shouldless day a week. I try to have like a Saturday or a Sunday or like a Friday afternoon be like my shouldless day. And an act of service that I've given myself.
That's beautiful. And I had a conversation with a dear friend a couple of years ago, and we were talking about adding more onto the plate. And she said, I think we need to switch it out to a tapas plate and only put a couple little things on there instead of just getting a bigger plate.
Oh, I
And I
love
love that. Because that's especially it comes back to the hyper responsibility, taking care, blah, blah, blah. But if you only have a little plate, you can only put so much on it. And maybe that's a stepping stone for folks.
definitely. Definitely. And I think learning to have fun with yourself is a wonderful way to learn to love yourself as well. And whatever that might be, like you talked about finding a book you've been wanting to dive into that wasn't instructive or educational or going to be show research. It was just for Denise, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or taking time out to just daydream or doodle or have a Saturday afternoon where you make a vision board or maybe just buy yourself some flowers when you're at the grocery store or pick up your favorite dessert. All of those things are messages that we're constantly sending ourselves that we're worthy of this.
You're breaking the spell. So for me, it's getting a silly wave, like just being silly ass funny and just entertaining the shit out of myself. That for me is a self-care, self-love, and it reminds me of how ridiculous so much of all of this is that we get worked up about. But if you can get yourself into a real silly mood or a real silly space, oh my goodness, it's a magic elixir.
It definitely is. And you guys know how much I love feng shui. Well, the relationship corner of your home in feng shui is the opposite right-hand corner from your front door. So if you just visualize walking into your front door, closing the door, and leaning your back against that front door, and then think about the opposite right-hand corner from where you're imagining yourself standing, that's your relationship corner. And a lot of feng shui experts will say to really, spruce up that area with partnership, things that represent partnership and twos and having two of something in that corner and or pink, which represents love and romance. But if you're working on self-love, this would be a great area of the home to really spruce up in terms of so maybe keeping your journal there or putting your vision board there so that you're reminding yourself always that you're working on this self-love. I think we need these visual reminders because we get so busy.
True. It's very true. And the importance of being comfortable in your own world, in your own shell. That's what it all boils down to, isn't it? So if you feel
Yes.
that the and clutter, clearing clutter, releasing old patterns, it all comes back to how are you taking care of yourself so that maybe you can lower that drawbridge and let someone else in to take care of you.
My favorite affirmation for working on self-love is I am loved, loving, and lovable.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, do you have a favorite one?
Mm, no. No, I don't off the top of my head. No.
I feel like it's important to have these little like mantras in our head so that when we do get in that little negative Nancy cycle, we can we can revert back to that affirmation. I'm loved, loving, and lovable. And it kind of like again, because I would when a negative thought hits my head, I always picture those red X's and I say clear, cancel, erase, delete. And I'll do that and then I'll replace it with my affirmation. I am loved,
Right.
loving, and lovable.
Right. And I think that's one that we can all apply beautifully.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered it a lot, and I hope that the things that we shared and all the questions that we asked can be a catalyst for helping people realize that you are worthy of being loved and to take care of yourself and to realize that you are special in your own right.
Yes, and that we all are here to grow our light, to shine our light, to share our light. And it really does start with cultivating that light from within, with loving ourselves.
I
And you know
agree.
how we said last week that's in that book we were talking about, Worthy, she says your self-worth is your ceiling. Well, I think your level of self-love becomes your ceiling for the kinds of love you attract in your life.
It gives you a new
Yes.
familiar, which is beautiful.
Exactly. So I hope everyone reminds themselves this week that you are loved, loving, and lovable. Have a great week, everyone. And please remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.